Hey guys, tonight we travel to the dusty heart of ancient Mesopotamia, where you wake up sticky, slightly sunburned, and already sweating through your linen kilt. Babylon is just waking up too. Its ziggurats catch the first glint of dawn like sleepy giants, and the scent of yesterday's barley mash still clings to the humid air. You're standing ankle deep in dry dust, the kind that seems to coat your soul while a merchant shouts about fish that may or may not still be alive. Welcome to 1600 BCE, where the streets are noisy, the sandals are thin, and the beer, well, it's not quite what you're picturing. You probably won't survive this day, not because of war or plague, or even an unfortunate encounter with a lion in the market square, but because your modern digestive system would riot after one gulp of Babylonian barley beer. And yes, you're drinking it anyway, because everyone is. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love knowing who's drifting off across the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squint toward the Tigris River, where reeds wave lazily in the haze, and oxen are already complaining about the workload. Someone hands you a clay cup, cool rough, and filled with something frothy thick and suspiciously room temperature. Welcome to the lifeblood of Babylon barley beer, or kaish as the Sumerians, before the Babylonians called it. This stuff has been brewing since before anyone bothered inventing the wheel, and it shows. You take a sip. It's like liquid oatmeal got into a fight with sourdough starter. The consistency is generously textured, and yet everyone's drinking it. Children, priests, soldiers, scribes, even the goat herder, whose only goal in life seems to be yelling at clouds. You see, barley beer isn't just a drink, it's a daily ritual, an economic staple, and occasionally a spiritual GPS. There's alcohol in it, sure, but not much by modern standards. Think of it as a gentle buzz and a full meal, all in one increasingly warm vessel. You follow the smell of malted grain to a communal brewing area tucked between sun-bleached walls. Clay jars squat like overfed frogs, bubbling softly as if gossiping about your modern clothes. Women stir thick porridge-like mash with carved paddles and singing to keep time. One young brewer in training explains through hand gestures and exaggerated facial expressions that they chew the grain to release the sugars. Yes, you heard that right. Human saliva, Babylon's secret fermentation weapon. You sit beside the vat and try not to think about backwash. As the day stretches and the sun glows hotter than a baked brick, you're struck by how central this beer truly is. Workers receive it as payment. Priests pour it as offerings. Children get the watered-down version, and the elderly claim it eases dreams. There's even a word for when someone drinks too much and falls asleep under a palm tree, tupu loosely translated as snoring like an ox who ate the moon. Okay, that translation might be slightly modernized. But here's where it gets interesting, because beer wasn't just about hydration or relaxation. It was believed to open doors in the mind. Doors that once nudged ajar gave way to otherworldly dreams. Not always logical ones, mind you. In fact, mostly not. One cuneiform tablet details a man who dreamt of his bread loaf sprouting wings and flying into the arms of the goddess Ishtar, who then turned into a goat and offered him advice on dating. Historians still argue Whether that dream was metaphor prophecy or just the result of too much poorly strained beer and an overactive subconscious. You lean against a sun-warmed wall, watching locals pass by. A woman balances a jar of beer on her head with impossible grace, humming a tune that sounds like the start of a lullaby. A pair of scribes, ink-stained and already tipsy, debate the exact location of their dream entrances. One insists his soul exits through his left ear. A temple official in lavender robes wanders by and points to the sky. Tonight, he mutters, the dreams will be strong. The moon is full and the barley was sweet. And that's when you start to feel it, the slow, molasses-thick fog of the beer working its way through you. Not in a dizzy party kind of way. No, this is older, sleepier. The kind of buzz that softens the world's hard edges and blurs the border between memory and vision. You blink and the river looks like it's breathing. Someone laughs nearby a short bubbling sound, and you realize you've lost track of how long you've been standing there. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe 3 hours. Time, like everything else in Babylon, moves on its own schedule. The sun begins to dip behind the city's sun-baked skyline. The color of the sky shifts to baked apricot. Shadows lengthen, and the first stars peek out like curious eyes. There's a low hum, as if the city itself is preparing to dream. You drain the rest of your cup. The beer leaves behind a faint grit on your tongue. You're not sure whether it's barley husk or sleep dust. Around you, people begin settling into routines that feel half chore, half ceremony. Clay mats are unrolled. Lamps are lit. You hear a man reciting a hymn to Ninkasi, the beer goddess, with the devotion of someone who truly believes she's responsible for his last lucid dream about flying fish and golden cows. You yawn, and it's not just from the heat. The air itself feels drowsy, like the entire city is exhaling at once, preparing for the dreams to come. And you, dear traveler, you're just getting started. The beer still lingers on your breath, warm, faintly sour, and oddly comforting. Your limbs have gone loose, like someone replaced your bones with braided rope. It's not that you're drunk exactly, not in the singing bad songs in a tavern kind of way. It's more like your thoughts are getting floaty, blurry around the edges, like warm barley soup in a ceramic bowl sloshing gently with each step you take. Someone waves you over a brewer with flour on their face and barley stuck in their hair. You join them under the reed awning where several large ceramic vats bubble quietly like ancient pets. This is where it starts the sacred art of making Babylonian beer, or as it's affectionately called, liquid bread, which sounds charming until you actually see it. There's no stainless steel here, no bottling lines or clean counters, just sticky stone floors and piles of malted grain sweating in the heat. The brewer hands you a mash paddle and grins. You stir the thick slurry, which looks suspiciously like breakfast oatmeal and smells like someone left a bakery in the sun too long. It's delicious in that earthy, unrefined, slightly alarmingly natural sort of way. The base is always barley planted, harvested, malted, and dried with care. You learn that sometimes emmer wheat is added too, depending on the region and the whim of the brewer. Water is heated, grain is mashed, and the mixture is left to bubble in open jars, while wild yeasts throw a fermentation party. There are no hops, no bottling, and filtering. Let's just say Babylonian beer comes with chewable extras. Still it works. It nourishes. It gives you a lightness in the head and a heaviness in the belly. Historians still argue whether the average Babylonian genuinely enjoyed the taste or just accepted the grit as a small price for not dying of thirst in the summer heat. You watch as another brewer adds a chunk of something brown and crusty to the vat appear, a twice-baked barley bread used specifically for brewing. Think of it as a prehistoric beer cube or soggy granola that dreams of being alcoholic. It floats like a ghostly sponge and immediately begins to dissolve. A scribe nearby is sketching the process on a clay tablet. You peek over their shoulder. The symbols are neat geometric. The depiction of the beer god is surprising. He has a loaf for a hat and what appears to be hops for eyebrows. You raise your own eyebrows in return. The scribe winks and goes back to carving. Later, you're offered another cup, this time with a straw. Not a trendy stainless steel one, but a long reed with holes carved in the side designed to filter out chunks of grain and floating solids. It's surprisingly effective. You slurp cautiously, and the beer comes through cool and mildly fizzy. Not bad. Definitely more savory porridge than Friday night IPA, but you're starting to see the appeal. A local explains that this beer isn't just for pleasure, it's currency. Workers are paid in it. Rations are measured by the jar. Even priests receive a daily allotment. The brewer jokes that if they ever went on strike, the gods would probably get cranky and stop answering dreams altogether. Someone else joins in to explain the three strengths of beer, the strong version for adult men, and temple feasts, the medium kind for general workers, and the light watered down stuff for children elders and those who need to stay vaguely coherent. The terminology is less about alcohol content and more about social status. You sip from the medium-strength vat and feel yourself sinking deeper into a pleasant barley-scented fog. As evening rolls in, someone begins to hum an old brewing song, probably older than the bricks under your feet. It's rhythmic, repetitive, and strangely hypnotic. You don't understand the words, but you feel them. They're about fields, patience, heat, and dreams. And it turns out you've arrived just in time for dream season. One of the brewers leans in conspiratorially and tells you that beer brewed under the first full moon of summer produces longer dreams. There's no science to back this up, of course, but it's one of those things people believe so thoroughly it becomes true in their bones. Like how cats always land on their feet, or how your uncle's third wife can predict rain using only her knees. You sit back against the warm clay wall, your cup in hand. Around you, others do the same. People talk in low voices, trading brewing tips and dream stories like they're gossiping about neighbors. One man claims that last night he dreamt of climbing a ziggurat that turned into a ladder made of lentils. Another mutters about being chased by an army of sandals. No one seems alarmed. Here dreams are just another form of conversation. More confusing maybe, but just as important. A local woman recounts a dream where she was floating down the Euphrates on a raft made entirely of stale beer bread. She claims it was peaceful, except for the fish, who kept asking her for directions. You chuckle, and she shrugs. Better than the dream I had last week, she says. In that one, I was a grain of barley, and a goat tried to eat me. She takes another sip and stares at the sky. You start to feel the tug of sleep yourself now, a heaviness behind your eyes. The kind of drowsiness that's not quite physical, more like your mind trying to curl up in a warm blanket woven from fermented grain and strange symbols. The brewing vats bubble on. The air smells like toast and old books. Someone nearby is already snoring gently face down on a folded robe. You finish your drink, wipe your mouth on your sleeve, and wonder what you'll dream about tonight. By the time you shuffle back into the city's heart, the stars are scattered like spilled millet across a velvet sky, and the streets have settled into their nighttime hush. It's cooler now, but only just. The stones beneath your feet are still holding onto the heat of the day, like old men reluctant to let go of a story. The barley beer has properly soaked into your system. You're not swaying exactly, but walking feels a bit like wading through soup, thick, unhurried, mildly delicious. The people around you are in no rush either. Babylon at night is sleepy, but never fully still. Somewhere a woman sings to her loom. A dog barks once, then gives up. You spot a man carefully herding ducks by moonlight, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. You're drawn toward the temple district, not by any conscious decision really, but by some half-remembered idea that dreams are clearer near the gods. The ziggurat of Marduk looms ahead, its terraced steps stacked like a giant's forgotten bedtime story. Torches flicker along the base, casting shadows that stretch and sway like tired dancers. A temple scribe sits cross-legged on the steps, scratching something into a clay tablet. You peer over his shoulder again. Another dream. This one is more elaborate. A king dreams of a lion wearing a necklace made of stars. It speaks in riddles and walks backward into a fig tree. The scribe mutters something about needing more clay. Dreams here aren't just idle entertainment. They're messages, codes, portals. Sometimes they come from the gods, sometimes from your own buried guilt about stealing that extra date from the granary. Historians still argue whether Babylonian dreams were treated more like divine telegrams or psychological puzzles. You suspect it's both and neither. A priestess offers you a small lump of incense, dried herbs and resin crushed into a rough cube. You light it and inhale deeply. It smells like sun-drenched bark and crushed lavender with an odd twist of something you can't name. The priestess nods approvingly. It keeps the nightmares friendly, she says. You blink slowly. That sentence sounded entirely logical. The beer must be doing its job. A group of people sit in a quiet circle nearby, wrapped in thin woven blankets. One by one, they share their dreams. No judgment, no analysis, just the retelling like they're recounting what they saw on a walk. A woman describes riding a turtle the size of a house. A man dreamt of his deceased mother, who handed him a fish and whispered, "Plant it." He did. The dream ended with a fish tree blooming in the desert. You're invited to sit. You do. Someone hands you a soft pillow made of woven reeds, and you lie back staring up at the sky. It's clearer than it has any right to be. The Milky Way spills directly over the ziggurat's peak, and it feels like if you just held out your hand, you might catch a star between your fingers. The priestess begins a chant, low, rhythmic, laced with the kind of repetition that worms its way into your bones. It isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention, but it coils around your thoughts, guiding them like a lazy river through a garden of half-formed ideas. Your eyes flutter shut, and now you're not entirely sure if you're dreaming or just thinking in a dreamlike way. Your body feels distant. There's barley in your blood stars in your hair and sand clinging to your knees. You hear a goat sneeze somewhere, and it makes perfect sense. You dream, though whether it's real or not is debatable. You are a fish. You swim through air thick as honey past reed huts and floating jars. The sun has eyelashes and winks at you. You meet a crocodile wearing a necklace made of barley beads. He asks if you've seen his dream. You shrug. He sighs and floats away. You open your eyes, just briefly. Still night, still stars, someone snoring. You smile, then close your eyes again. This time, you're on a raft made of beer straws sailing down the Euphrates. The water is made of ink, and it writes symbols across the soles of your feet. You pass temples carved from sleeping birds. A woman with wings offers you a date fruit that turns into a poem in your mouth. You try to ask her a question, but your words turn into clay and fall into the river. A soft laugh, maybe real, maybe not. You roll onto your side, feel the reeds under your cheek, and listen as the wind hums a song only barley remembers. You hear phrases float by fragments from other dreams. Someone speaks of silver goats. Someone else mutters about ladders made of feathers. And in that moment, you understand why Babylonians didn't dismiss dreams as nonsense. They were maps, fractured ones, sure, and occasionally smudged by beer, but maps nonetheless. They pointed to longings, to fears, to messages that had no words. The line between dream and memory, between prophecy and dinner hallucination, it's a squiggle, not a line. The beer just helps you see it more clearly. You stir slightly as the priestess moves through the sleeping bodies, sprinkling something that smells like crushed dates and old sandalwood. For clearer visions, she whispers to no one and everyone, and then you sink. Not fall, not crash, just drift. Into a space without walls, without streets, without names. Just barley stars and stories that don't need telling. You are dreaming, probably, but that hardly matters now. The dawn creeps in quietly soft as a whispered promise, spilling pale light over Babylon's rooftops. You awaken slowly, wrapped in the gentle cocoon of your reed blanket, the faint scent of beer and incense still clinging to your skin. Outside, the city begins to stir birds, calling in a chorus that feels oddly familiar, as if they too dreamed last night. You rise and stretch your muscles, still heavy from the sleep, filled with barley-soaked visions. The city is waking, but not rushing. You hear the distant clatter of water jugs and the low murmur of vendors setting up for the day. There's a rhythm here, an unhurried pulse that invites you to linger a moment longer before joining the bustle. Heading towards the market, your steps fall easy on the worn bricks. You pass a group of women arranging piles of dates, their fingers deft and sure. A child chases a dust mote, giggling as it flits just out of reach. You inhale deeply, smells of fresh bread spice stew, and yes, even the lingering tang of last night's beer mingle in the air. At a stall, a man sells medicinal herbs. He catches your eye and offers a small pouch filled with crushed willow leaves. For headaches, he says with a grin, or for when your dreams are too loud. You tuck it into your belt, amused by the notion of dreams having a volume setting. As you wander, you overhear snippets of conversations. A farmer grumbles about unpredictable rains. A scribe debates the proper way to record omens, and an elder recounts a tale of a dream that saved the city from disaster. Dreams here aren't private affairs. They're woven into the daily fabric, guiding decisions big and small. Curious, you pause by a group gathered around a storyteller. She speaks softly, her voice steady and soothing, recounting ancient myths interlaced with details of everyday life, how the first barley was cultivated, the origins of beer, and the dreams that inspired the gods themselves. Her words drift like a lullaby, wrapping the listeners in a shared reverie. You find yourself thinking back to the brewery, the sacred vats bubbling quietly in the cool night. The idea that beer was more than a drink, it was a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a potion to coax the mysteries of the mind into the waking world. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians truly believed their dreams were messages from gods, or clever stories spun to make sense of random thoughts. But here in the morning light, it feels like both. A young apprentice approaches, eyes bright with curiosity. "Do you want to see the barley fields?" she asks. You nod, intrigued by the chance to walk where it all begins, the grain that feeds the city and fuels the dreams. Outside the walls, the fields stretch wide, golden and waving in the breeze. The sun warms your face, and you imagine the barley bending in time, with the wind whispering secrets to anyone who will listen. The apprentice points to the neat rows and explains how the grain is harvested, malted, and prepared for brewing, a process honed over centuries. Nearby, a farmer demonstrates the ancient method of threshing barley by hand, the grain scattering like tiny jewels in the sun. It's laborious, quiet work, requiring patience and care. You can almost hear the echoes of those who came before their hands, steady and sure. As you watch, a peculiar detail catches your eye: small clay tokens shaped like barley grains tied to the harvest baskets. The apprentice explains that these tokens serve as blessings meant to ensure a good yield and sweet dreams come harvest time. The idea of barley doubling as both sustenance and spiritual talisman feels wonderfully fitting. Walking back toward the city, you carry with you the warmth of the sun and the quiet hum of the fields. The barley's journey from seed to beer, from earth to dream, feels like a cycle that never truly ends. Tonight you think you might dream again, perhaps of dancing grains of sacred rivers, or the slow bubbling dance of barley beer in its clay vessel. You smile to yourself. Babylon's dreams are waiting. The sun dips low now, painting the sky in shades of rose and amber, and the city prepares for evening. You find yourself wandering toward a quieter district where narrow alleys weave between mud brick houses. Here the scents shift: freshly baked bread mingles with the faint familiar aroma of fermented barley. Inside a modest home, you're invited to sit with a family gathered around a low wooden table. They're pouring a dark, frothy liquid from a wide clay jug into shallow bowls, Babylonian beer, of course. The father explains that beer is more than just a drink. It's nourishment, medicine, and sometimes even a comfort after a long day. You learn about the special recipes, how each household adds its own secret ingredients. Some use dates, others sprinkle in fragrant herbs like thyme or coriander. One neighbor swears by adding a pinch of salt to balance the sweetness, though the jury is still out on whether that's clever or odd. As you sip the thick, earthy brew, your eyes drift to a small wooden box on the table filled with clay tablets. These tablets contain recipes, prayers, and even the occasional poem dedicated to the humble barley grain. One verse read aloud by the mother praises beer as the golden gift of Enki, the god of water and wisdom. You listen amused by the way the words flow reverent but playful, as if the ancient poets couldn't help but wink while praising something so delightfully sticky and grainy. It's a reminder that the Babylonians knew how to find humor even in their most sacred traditions. The conversation turns to medicine, and you hear about how barley beer was often prescribed to soothe ailments, an early form of what we might call a comfort tonic. It was used to settle upset stomachs, ease fevers, and even help people sleep. You think of your own mild drowsiness and wonder if the brewers knew what they were doing all along. Historians still argue whether these medicinal uses were truly effective or mostly placebo, but the fact remains that barley beer was woven into daily life in ways both practical and spiritual. The family shares stories of peculiar remedies involving barley, like using barley water as eye wash or grinding malted barley to create soothing pastes for skin irritations. You're fascinated by how resourceful and intimate their relationship with this grain is. Outside, the city begins to glow with torchlight, and the sounds of evening prayers drift softly through the streets. You feel a peacefulness settling over you, a gentle invitation to rest. As you finish your bowl, the family offers you a small reed straw, a nod to the tradition of sipping beer with a straw to avoid the sediment. You smile, remembering the brewery's bubbling vats and the straw filtering the grains. Walking back through the dimming streets, you carry with you the warmth of shared stories and the quiet hum of ancient rituals. The barley beer isn't just a drink, it's a thread that ties together the people, their hopes, and even their dreams. Tonight you think you might dream of golden fields, bubbling vats, and the soft laughter of families gathered under a desert sky. The night deepens, and you find yourself drawn once again toward the temple precinct, where the quiet hum of the ziggurat seems to pulse with a different kind of energy after dark. You step lightly on the worn stones, each one telling its own story, whispering secrets of centuries past. The air is cooler now, scented faintly with myrrh and burnt barley husks. Near the temple entrance, a small group of priests and priestesses are gathered, their robes rustling softly like dried leaves in the breeze. They are preparing for the night's ritual, a ceremony devoted to the god Ninkasi, the divine brewer and protector of barley beer. You watch as they chant, their voices low and measured, weaving ancient hymns that praise the sacred grain and the gift of fermentation. One priest explains that Ninkasi's blessings were sought not just for good beer, but also for clarity in dreams. It's believed that when Ninkasi's favor is strong, dreams become lucid windows into both the soul and the future. You know, recalling your own barley-laced visions from earlier, wondering if there's truth in these prayers. Historians still argue whether these rituals were intended purely as spiritual observances, or if they also served a social function, bringing the community together to share stories, hopes, and yes, a few laughs. You suspect it's both. Nearby, a scribe is busy inscribing a new hymn onto a fresh clay tablet, his fingers steady despite the candlelight flickering wildly. The hymn recounts how Ninkasi once saved a king from a restless night filled with troubling dreams by gifting him a special brew made from sacred barley and sweet dates. The king's peaceful sleep restored his kingdom thrived, or so the story goes. You notice an odd little detail. The scribe occasionally pauses to dip his reed stylus into a small bowl of beer, as if to anoint the words with liquid gold. You smile at the thought, proof that even the most serious of scribes appreciated a good barley beer now and then. As the ceremony progresses, the priests begin to share their own dreams, tales of winged lions, rivers turning to honey, and stars falling gently into the palm of a child's hand. Each story is told with a calm reverence, and you feel the weight of these narratives settling softly around you like a warm blanket. The night air cools further, and you pull your cloak tighter. The rhythmic chanting blends with the distant murmur of the Euphrates, creating a lullaby unique to this ancient city. You remember the stories of Barley's journey, from wild grass to sacred grain, from simple food to divine drink, and how through it all it remained a constant companion to human dreams and desires. With a final whisper of thanks to Ninkasi, you step away from the temple steps and into the quiet streets, ready to drift once more into that mysterious realm where barley and dreams intertwine. You find yourself wandering toward the quieter side of the city, where the houses crowd close and the streets are softer beneath your feet. The air carries the faint scent of drying figs and freshly crushed olives, a subtle reminder that the day's labor is coming to rest. The hum of distant voices is a lullaby, gentle and low. Nearby, a group of elders gathers under the shade of a sprawling date palm. Their faces are lined like the cracked earth, but their eyes gleam with the sharpness of well-worn wisdom. You settle nearby, curious about the stories they share as the sun dips lower. One elder begins recounting an unusual dream he had after too much barley beer. He saw a giant tortoise slowly carrying the city on its back, its shell carved with intricate patterns of stars and rivers. The dream spoke of endurance, patience, and the slow march of time. The others nod thoughtfully, some murmuring their own barley-infused visions. Dreams like these, they say, are gifts that remind us of our place in the world, not rushing, but moving steadily like the tortoise. The imagery sticks with you, the slow, deliberate pace, something you wish you could carry into your own restless mind. The elders also speak of a curious practice. Before bedtime, some Babylonians would chew a small amount of barley bread dipped in honey. The sticky sweetness was believed to soothe the mind and invite pleasant dreams. You wonder if this was an early form of sleep hygiene or just an excuse to enjoy dessert before bed. Historians still argue whether such customs were widespread or limited to specific families or classes, but the notion of barley as a sleep aid seems to persist in various forms. As twilight deepens, the elders shift their conversation to the everyday, the rhythms of farming, the changing seasons, the occasional odd law that forbade carrying beer through the city gates after sunset. They laugh softly about the beer curfew, a rule likely meant to prevent too many late-night revelers, but one that, if enforced, must have led to some creative smuggling. You chuckle along, imagining sneaky barley beer raids under cover of darkness. It's a comforting reminder that even in the ancient times, people grappled with the same balancing act between work-rest and a little harmless indulgence. You rise and thank the elders, feeling the calm they exude settle over you like a soft cloak. The stars above blink into existence one by one, and you start walking back toward the city's center, the image of the tortoise carrying Babylon imprinted in your mind. The night feels full of possibility, a slow-moving story waiting to be dreamt. You make your way back through the dim city lanes, the air now cooler and threaded with the scent of wet clay and distant cooking fires. There's a hush to Babylon at night, not silence exactly, but a softened murmur, as though the city is tucking itself in. Your feet lead you toward the banks of the Euphrates, drawn by the sound of lapping water and the flicker of oil lamps bobbing gently on moored boats. Down at the riverside, a small crowd has gathered not for trade or travel, but to dream together. You ease into their circle, and an old woman begins to speak in a voice soft enough to lull stones to sleep. She tells of dream incubation, a practice where people came to the river after drinking barley beer, hoping to receive divine messages while they slept beneath the stars. You glance at the mats laid out beneath fig trees, at the clay jars of beer passed from hand to hand. There's no rush, no urgency, only waiting for visions, for whispers, for whatever the night chooses to offer. According to her, the dreams born here often spoke in riddles. One man dreamt of a fish speaking Sumerian and advising him to plant his crops later in the season. Another woman saw her late grandmother weaving reeds into the shape of a scorpion, warning her not to trust a certain merchant. Were these omens internal anxieties? Historians still argue whether dream incubation was taken literally or was more of a poetic pastime, a way to make sense of an uncertain world. You're handed a small clay cup. The beer inside is cooler than before, thinner, almost like barley tea. It's spiced with cinnamon and a trace of dried citrus rind, someone's special nighttime blend. The woman explains that this lighter version was often brewed specifically for dream rituals. Heavy beer made for heavy dreams. This, by contrast, helped loosen the mind just enough to receive images without getting tangled in them. As you sip, your gaze drifts across the water. Lamps bob like tiny stars caught in the current. A boy hums a lullaby to himself. Someone nearby begins to describe a dream he had of a giant eagle lifting the ziggurat into the sky, its wings beating slow as drums. The river speaks too. You think you hear it murmuring its surface, shimmering with reflected firelight. Was that just the wind, or something older and stranger? Babylonian dreams you've learned weren't limited by gravity or logic. They flowed like the river, sometimes calm, sometimes wild, always full of hidden meanings. You lie back on a woven mat, staring up at a sky where Orion's belt is just barely visible. Around you, others are dozing off. The woman begins softly singing an ancient hymn, not one of praise, but one of gentle encouragement. It's not about gods or glory. It's about rest, about permission to let go. It's said the Euphrates was not only a source of water and life, but of dreams. Babylonians believed that sleep beside the river could reveal answers too delicate for daylight. You don't know if that's true, but as your limbs grow heavier and your eyes begin to slip closed, you believe it could be. Tonight your dreams may come slowly. They may come sideways, but they will come carried on barley and river and breath. You awaken slowly, or maybe you never quite fell asleep. The boundary between dreaming and waking feels thin tonight. Somewhere nearby, a rooster makes a half-hearted noise, as if considering whether it's worth the effort to greet the dawn. But the sky is still dark, sprinkled with stars, and Babylon isn't quite ready to stir. You stretch bones softly cracking like old clay tablets, and find yourself wandering again this time toward one of the smaller residential courtyards where a few families are still gathered around oil lamps, chatting in the drowsy, unhurried way that only night allows. One father is gently teasing his children about the strange dreams they had after sneaking too much of the grown-up barley drink. One dreamt she was riding a donkey made of bread. Another insisted a fish offered him a job as a temple guard. The parents laugh, but not mockingly. There's a tenderness to it because in Babylon, dreams are a family affair. They're discussed over breakfast, interpreted over lunch, and sometimes even reenacted at dinner if they're entertaining enough. You sit beside them listening as the father explains a curious tradition children were sometimes given a tiny sip of barley beer, not for pleasure, but as part of a household ritual to sweeten their dreams before bed. Always diluted, always ceremonial. A sign that even the youngest were part of the great nightly journey into the subconscious. Historians still debate whether these rituals were common or simply poetic traditions noted by scribes with too much time and not enough real evidence. But in stories like these, the truth doesn't need to be precise. It just needs to feel lived in, and it does. The mother brings out a small tablet, wrapped in linen like a treasure. It's one of their family's dream records, something she's kept for years. On it are little pictographs and shorthand inscriptions, a bird flying backward, a rainstorm inside a house, a tree that sings lullabies. She reads a few entries aloud, and you're struck by how imaginative and familiar they feel. These could be the dreams of anyone anywhere, but here they're archived, cherished. One child climbs into his mother's lap and asks her what it means if you dream of being turned into a clay pot. She pauses amused and says, "It probably means you've been sitting still too long." Everyone chuckles. You can't help but imagine a future scholar stumbling on that translation and declaring it an ancient metaphor for obedience. Someone brings out a sweet barley biscuit flavored with cardamom and dried fruit. It's passed around and you take a bite, crunchy soft and oddly comforting. This was another common nighttime snack. In Babylon, barley wasn't just in beer, but also in cakes, porridge and treats meant to settle both the belly and the mind. You hear of how certain dream symbols were widely recognized. Snakes often meant renewal, flooding waters, meant change, and flying, well, flying almost always meant trouble. Too much ambition, maybe, or too much beer. One boy claims to have dreamt of the moon eating the stars. His sister shushes him, eyes wide. "That's a temple dream," she whispers. "You're supposed to tell that one to the priest." You watch the family carefully decide whether to record the dream or keep it private. The sense of awe around dreams, especially ones that brush against the celestial, is palpable. Later, the father tells you of his own most vivid barley dream. He was walking across a field of sleeping lions, each one breathing softly in rhythm. At the center of the field was a single stalk of barley glowing like fire. He didn't know what it meant, but he'd never forgotten it. You suggest maybe the lions were just full, and the stalk was a reminder to harvest before it was too late. He laughs, nodding. Maybe you were a dream reader in a past life. Eventually, the lamps are dimmed, and the courtyard grows quiet. You lay back against a worn cushion full of barley biscuits and shared wonder and close your eyes. The night continues, and with it, Babylon dreams on. You wake again or drift further in lying beneath a woven roof shaded with grapevines, the air thick with warmth and the faint perfume of last night's incense. The sun has not yet breached the city's walls, but there's a soft golden tone to the darkness now, as if Babylon itself is preparing to stretch its limbs. This time, you're inside one of the city's dream libraries. Not a literal library, though clay tablets do line the shelves, but more of a community dream house, a place where scribes and priests collect and catalog dreams. It's surprisingly quiet for a space so full of imagination. The man leading you, a temple record keeper, with hands stained by ink and date syrup, explains in a hushed voice that dreams are loud things and must be stored gently like fragile glass. The Babylonians believed dreams could be messages from the gods' echoes of past lives, or even travels of the soul while the body slept. To ignore a dream was considered unwise. To misinterpret one could be downright dangerous. That's where places like this came in. As you walk slowly past the shelves, you see rows upon rows of tablets marked with strange symbols, some pictorial, some cuneiform, and some that resemble playful sketches rather than serious records. One tablet shows a man trying to row a boat made of bread across a sea of soup. Another tells the story of a woman who dreamt her shadow refused to follow her. Some dreams are straightforward. I saw a lion and then received a letter from my brother. Others require interpretation. The moon kissed my forehead and I could no longer speak. Historians still argue whether the scribes were more like analysts or spiritual guides, but in this room, they seem to take their work seriously, gently cradling even the silliest dreams like sacred scrolls. You're shown a thick tablet called the Dream Almanac, essentially a guide to symbols and what they might mean. If you dreamt of rain in the desert, it could mean unexpected good news. Dreaming of fire might suggest anger, but only if the flames were blue. And if you dreamed of barley, well, that could mean many things. Prosperity if the stalks were tall, sickness if they were flattened. Or if you dreamed of beer made from barley, it might just mean you drank too much of it. You smile, imagining a line of Babylonians lining up sheepish and hungover, asking the scribes to make sense of their barley-fueled night visions. In one corner of the room, a child is carefully learning to press wet clay into the dream log. His teacher corrects him gently. The fish was talking, not singing. If you mix those up, you'll cause confusion. The child nods solemnly. In a culture where dreams could sway decisions and omens held sway over harvests, details mattered. A scribe tells you a quirky tale of King Nabu-apla-iddina, who once paused a military campaign because of a recurring dream in which he was chased by a swarm of bees shouting advice. The king supposedly took this as a sign to rework his plans. The campaign succeeded. Bees became lucky briefly. There's no real record of that in mainstream history, but then again, sometimes dreams outrun fact. As you listen, the dream library becomes a sanctuary of thought, a bridge between waking life and the theater of the mind. You begin to see why the Babylonians placed so much stock in dreams. In a world full of war weather and unpredictable gods, dreams offered a space where anything was possible and nothing could go wrong, at least not permanently. You pause beside a tablet bearing the oldest dream in the room. It's a simple one. I was walking with my brother, and we did not speak. The wind told me everything. It's dated over 1,000 years ago from a priest whose name has long faded. You read it twice, unsure whether it's profound or just poetic. But either way, you feel its quiet weight. The record keeper gently places a fresh damp clay tablet into your hands. If you remember your dream, he says, press it here, even if it's nonsense. You hesitate, then press your fingers into the clay. You don't write anything, just leave your mark. You slip out of the dream library with fingers still damp from clay, the sky now glowing pale with the promise of sunrise. Babylon is waking up but not rushing. There's a leisurely rhythm to the city's mornings, especially after a night like this one. The streets are slowly stirring with people yawning, stretching, shaking the dreams from their shoulders. Bread ovens crackle to life. Water carriers clatter past with sloshing jars. And somewhere overhead, a rooster finally commits to a full-throated crow, as if the sun needed his permission to rise. But not everyone is leaving their dreams behind just yet. You wander into a quiet courtyard where two women sit beneath an olive tree, grinding barley for breakfast. One hums softly a tune you recognize from the riverside lullabies. Between turns of the millstone, they speak about their dreams, not with urgency, but with quiet amusement, like recounting a shared inside joke. The older one says she dreamt her hair turned into a ladder, which her cousin climbed to retrieve the moon. The younger simply nods as if that makes perfect sense and says, sounds like your cousin needs to mind her own business. Here, dream interpretation isn't always divine. It's sometimes just casual therapy, a way to unpack feelings you don't say aloud. Historians still argue whether most Babylonian dreams were seen as serious prophecy or just a social pastime. But it seems like the answer is both depending on the mood. You're invited to sit, and someone offers you a warm barley cake drizzled with pomegranate syrup. It's soft, mildly sweet, and surprisingly dense, perfect for grounding you back into your body after a night of floating through dream logic. One of the women suggests it's also perfect for keeping wild dreams at bay. Too much honey before bed, she says, and your dreams run around like goats. You learn that certain foods were believed to encourage different types of dreams. Onions, visions of family, dates, love, and longing. Barley beer, of course, could bring anything from flying turtles to divine revelations, or sometimes just an urgent need to pee in the middle of the night. Everyone laughs. The topic turns to dream omens. One woman shares how her mother always swore that dreaming of losing a sandal meant an argument with a friend. Another insists that if you dream of a bird entering your home, someone will bring news soon. Whether these signs are true or not seems beside the point. It's the act of remembering and sharing that holds power. You notice a young girl drawing her dream in the dust with a stick. Two suns, a dancing goat, and a tower taller than the moon. Her mother leans over, quietly approving. There's no ridicule here, only curiosity. As the sun begins to clear the rooftops, you feel the dream world dissolving into daylight. But it doesn't vanish entirely. In Babylon, dreams are stitched into the fabric of the day. They're consulted before big decisions. They're recorded next to market inventories. They're discussed alongside weather forecasts and gossip. You help grind a little barley, the repetition soothing. The sound of the stone rolling over the grain is steady like breathing. You realize that this, too, is a kind of dreaming, remembering, turning, grinding, until something soft emerges from something hard. You're shown a small amulet, worn smooth from years of wear, etched with symbols meant to protect the wearer from nightmares. It was made for children, but passed between family members when sleep became troubled. Some say it works. Others just like the feel of it in their palm. The day begins to build now. Voices rise. Footsteps quicken. But part of you is still tethered to the barley fields. The river dreams the singing fish and the bee prophets. Maybe that's what the Babylonians understood best. Dreams don't vanish. They linger in the grind of the mill, in the hush of a courtyard, in the sticky corners of a laugh. You rise brushing flour from your hands and take one last bite of cake. The dream may be over, but it's not forgotten. The sun now slides fully over Babylon's ziggurats, catching on gold-tipped roofs and warming the wide clay boulevards. Vendors are opening their stalls. Scribes are already muttering over tablets. Somewhere in the distance, a priest is calling for morning prayers with the rhythmic clang of a bronze bell. And yet, even as Babylon grinds into motion, your thoughts drift not forward into the day, but sideways into a peculiar little chamber behind the Temple of Marduk. This room doesn't show up on most maps, and many Babylonian citizens probably don't even know it exists. But the priests here call it the House of the Hidden Sleep, and it is exactly what it sounds like, a place reserved for dreaming intentionally under divine supervision. The door creaks as you enter, and you're enveloped in cool, shadowy stillness. No incense, no sound, just faint streaks of light slipping through narrow slats. The walls are painted with crescent moons, leaping fish, and symbols you don't recognize, likely prayers or dream offerings left by other visitors. The room is small, barely big enough for 3 or 4 people to lie down comfortably. And that apparently was the idea. Here the most devout Babylonians, or the most desperate, would come after fasting, praying, and sipping barley beer infusions mixed with mugwort or date blossom, their goal to summon a sacred dream. Historians still debate what exactly these dreams were for. Healing divine consultation, psychological unburdening before the invention of therapists, likely all of the above. But the priests had strict procedures. You had to be clean. Your intent had to be serious. And strangely, you had to arrive well-fed. No one trusts the dreams of a hungry man. You lie down on the smooth stone floor, which is faintly cool against your skin. For a moment, there's nothing. Just the soft pressure of your own breath and the weight of the room's expectations. And then you're in it, or rather, the dream arrives. In it, you're standing at the top of a barley field, the size of the entire city, the wind blowing patterns through the stalks, like invisible hands drawing across a drum. You walk forward. Your feet sink into warm earth. The field parts to reveal a stairway descending directly into the ground. This, the priests would say, is a good sign. A descent in a dream meant you were ready to uncover something hidden. As you go down the steps, the air grows thick with the smell of crushed grain and river silt. At the bottom, a lion with the voice of your grandmother offers you a bowl of soup. Don't spill it, she says, or you'll wake up remembering nothing. You take the bowl and sip. The soup tastes like memories, sweet, familiar, a little sad. You begin to cry, not because you're sad, but because your dream self knows that remembering too much is dangerous. Better to let some things stay gently blurry. When you wake still lying on the temple floor, there's a priest crouched nearby, watching you calmly. Did the lion speak? he asks, not unkindly. You nod. He doesn't write anything down. He just nods back and says, good. Then the god heard you. You're not entirely sure what that means. But it's not the kind of answer you're supposed to question. You're gently helped to your feet, given a warm barley wafer to ground your body, and led outside into the sunlight. The moment you cross the threshold, you feel changed not dramatically, but subtly, like something has shifted one grain to the left inside your soul. One of the junior temple assistants leans over and whispers, if you dream of fish again tonight, don't tell the priests. They'll think you're bragging. You both laugh. Even in sacred dreaming, there's room for teasing. You walk slowly away from the house of hidden sleep, unsure whether it was a ritual, a dream, or a very elaborate nap. But you do know one thing Babylonians took dreaming seriously, not just for fun, not just for mystery, but as a tool, a mirror, and sometimes a divine conversation. And tonight, when the beer flows again, and the barley's sweetness coats your tongue, maybe, just maybe, you'll descend that staircase again. The air is warming now, and the hum of city life builds like a distant drumbeat. But for you, Babylon still drifts at the edge of sleep. You walk slowly, dazed in the most pleasant way, past quiet courtyards and still cool alleyways. Everything feels softer somehow, like the world has a blanket draped over it. You wander into a neighborhood you don't quite remember passing through before. The walls are lower here, the streets narrower. The scent of baked clay and date syrup hovers in the air. This is where the ordinary Babylonians live. Not priests, not scribes, not kings, just everyday people with barley under their nails and dreams in their heads. Here you find a curious scene, an old man sitting beneath a crooked fig tree, surrounded by half-asleep listeners. He's telling a dream, not a current one. This dream is supposedly from his childhood, back when the river flooded so badly the goats learned to swim. I dreamed, he says, that the river asked me for my name, and when I gave it, the river forgot how to flow. The others nod. Someone adds, well, that explains the irrigation ditch. Another asks if the river at least apologized. The old man shrugs. It coughed up a frog and left. This is the Babylonian Dream Salon. It's not official, not inscribed on clay, or sealed by temple decree. But it's just as important. These are the dreams that don't get written down, the weird ones, the funny ones, the slightly embarrassing ones that involve chickens and trousers, and yet they're shared like currency traded over breakfast bowls and late-night fire pits. You learn that many Babylonians kept their own private dream songs, simple melodies made up to remember particularly vivid dreams. A woman nearby hums one for you. It's lilting and strange, almost circular in its tune. She says it's about the time she dreamt she gave birth to a melon. A very polite melon, she adds. It said thank you. Historians still argue whether such informal dream sharing had deeper ritual meanings, or if it was just good storytelling. Probably both. In a culture where the gods whispered through night visions, and where animals often spoke perfect Akkadian, no dream was too silly to hold a little truth. Children gather around you, eager to share their own dreams. One says he rode a camel that was also a boat. Another dreamed he became a loaf of bread and was nearly eaten by his uncle. You nod solemnly. That uncle sounds suspicious. You're handed a cup of barley water, barely fermented, just cloudy and cool. It's said to settle dream residue, though one man winks and admits it's mostly to chase away the morning after fuzziness from the stronger stuff. As you sip, the oldest woman in the group begins to recite what she calls a dream list. It's not official, she says, but compiled from years of listening. Dream of a broken comb, in trouble with a friend. Dream of flying backwards, someone from your past returns. Dream of a pig in a crown, avoid marketplace arguments. Dream of your mother's voice in a jar, listen more, talk less. Dream of too many sandals, you're preparing for something big. You glance down, you're wearing 2 left sandals. The group laughs when you tell them. One of the kids offers to swap. That way, at least one of us walks straight today. It's moments like this that remind you how blurred the lines are in Babylon between dream and day, between sacred and silly. To them, a dream wasn't just something you had. It was something you lived with, chewed on, passed around, and folded into the rhythms of your life. Before you leave, someone presses a small dried fig into your palm. For later, she says. When your next dream comes hungry, you nod, tucking it into your sash, and step back into the warming light, the voices of dreamers still drifting behind you like birdsong. The fig feels warm in your pocket as you wander on, deeper into the city's sun-dappled maze. By now the morning has matured. Shopkeepers shout about onions, chickens, argue with alarming intensity, and even the stray dogs seem to have work to do. But there's still a hush in your limbs, a slow echo of sleep that hasn't quite left you. You let it guide you to the banks of the Euphrates, where Babylon breathes deepest. Here by the river, time loosens its grip. The reeds whisper, the water glints, and someone is snoring gently beneath a canopy of woven palm fronds. It's a ferry driver sprawled beside his boat, clearly recovering from too much barley beer and too many dreams. His hat lies over his face, but one hand rests on a wax tablet, half smeared, as if he tried to record his dream before sleep tugged him back under. You sit beside him, quietly respectful. The Euphrates licks the bank in slow, hypnotic pulses. A heron lifts one leg, then thinks better of it. And in this pause, you begin to understand dreams weren't just night visitors in Babylon. They were part of the river, part of the beer, part of the air. Even the laws, those famously stern codes, etched in stone, made space for dream logic. Some contracts allowed for renegotiation if a dream suggested divine disapproval. In rare cases, marriages were postponed after a particularly vivid omen dream. The god said wait was apparently a valid excuse. Historians still argue whether such decisions were respected equally across classes, or whether dream consultation was mostly reserved for the wealthy and the priest approved. But here by the river, you suspect the dreams didn't care much for class anyway. They came for anyone. You lean back, eyes half closed, and recall the old woman's dream list. Did she say anything about dreaming of water? Yes. Dream of a calm river. Peace is near. Dream of muddy floods. You're lying to yourself. Dream of a fish speaking in riddle. Eat more lentils. You smile because suddenly you hear it. A splash, then a voice not loud but persistent, as if spoken inside your ear rather than aloud. Why did you wear 2 left sandals? It asks. You turn slowly. A fish has surfaced near the bank, a shimmering tilapia with eyes that seem a little too knowing. You say nothing. The fish flicks its tail and continues. Next time, remember the melon. Dreams don't repeat unless you ignore them. Then it vanishes. You stare at the ripples, half laughing. You look around to see if anyone else heard. The snoring ferry driver remains motionless. A goose waddles past, unimpressed. Was it real? Does it matter? A group of teenage boys walk past balancing baskets of reeds. One glances at you, sees your expression, and grins. First talking fish, he says. You nod. He gives you a thumbs up. You'll get used to it. You stay by the river for a while longer, letting the dream dissolve into the day, then rise and walk back toward the heart of the city. Your steps are steady now, your thoughts quiet. At a small stall near the temple steps, a woman sells dream amulets, tiny clay fish sandal charms, etched barley grains. You buy one almost without thinking and tie it around your wrist. It doesn't promise anything, but it feels right, and that's enough. Your feet are dusty now, your limbs pleasantly tired. Babylon is loud again. Life has fully returned. But somewhere under the heat and the shouts and the rattling carts, that soft dream logic still hums. You pass a mural being repainted winged lions, fish with human faces, stars arranged in spirals. The artist uses a reed dipped in crushed lapis. You pause to watch as he outlines the eye of a dream, being part goat, part serpent, entirely disinterested in human logic. Guardian of the third sleep, he tells you casually, not looking up, only shows up if you've been drinking sesame beer, not barley. You ask if that makes a difference. He shrugs. Everything makes a difference, but only in dreams. You keep walking. In the shade of a colonnade, a group of students recite dream interpretations from long, waxy tablets. Their instructor, a man with chalk on his elbows, and a voice like a sleepy thundercloud, pauses mid-lecture to ask you, what does it mean if you dream your house is on stilts? You suggest it means their house is insecure. He laughs, delighted, or flooded, or walking away from them. See, dreams are always one blink ahead of our understanding. And that was the secret the Babylonians seemed to grasp so intuitively. Dreams weren't problems to solve. They were partners to walk beside. Puzzles, yes, but not ones you had to complete, just ones you had to carry gently in the back of your mind, like a story that doesn't need an ending. Historians still debate whether dream culture truly shaped Babylonian politics. Some argue kings only listened to omens when they reinforced decisions they already wanted to make. Others believe the entire apparatus of state was subtly guided by sleep battle plans, postponed treaties, delayed all because someone dreamed of 3 bleeding onions. But out here, away from the clay tablets and the royal gardens, it's easier to believe the dreams mattered. People live their lives as if they do. The man with the fig stand tells you which dreams bring good harvests. A street performer sings a lullaby supposedly taught to him in sleep by the ghost of his grandmother. Even the city dogs seem to nap with purpose, chasing dream birds in their twitching paws. The dream amulet around your wrist bumps lightly against your hip as you walk. You notice it has warmed with your body heat. You wander back toward the inn where your journey first began, though of course it's not an inn anymore. It's a large house with a courtyard garden and a sleeping cat exactly where you left it. Your barley beer from last night has gone flat, but the clay cup still smells sweet. You sit and sip the last of it, watching a pair of children play dream chase with a woven ball and a set of painted tiles. One of them shouts fish, and the other freezes until the spell is lifted. You don't know the rules. Maybe no one does. Maybe that's the point. And now, finally, as the sky tilts slowly toward its golden hour, you feel it again, that gentle tug behind your eyes, that drift in your breath that moment, where waking becomes optional. You lie down on the warm stone bench, the soft hum of insects wrapping around you like a low lullaby. And you dream. You dream that the lion from the temple returns, but now it wears sandals and speaks in riddles only you understand. You dream of a staircase made of barley stalks, stretching up instead of down. You dream of Babylon not as it was, but as it remembers itself, golden humming softly ridiculous and deeply sacred. And just before the dream dissolves, you hear someone laugh and say, "You really shouldn't have eaten the melon." You smile even as the vision fades. And with that, Babylon exhales. And now, you're floating. The streets of Babylon have faded into the distance, the noise softened to a hush like whispers underwater. The dreams, the barley, the fish, and lions, and sandals, they've all curled into quiet corners of your mind, their edges blurring like ink left in the sun. There's no need to remember everything. Dreams rarely ask that of you. They only ask to be felt. Your breath slows, your limbs soften. The ancient walls, once bustling with life and laughter and strange sleep-soaked rituals, now feel miles away. They dissolve like sand, slipping through fingers still present, but no longer pressing. The river laps gently in the distance, and even that sound begins to stretch and yawn the way sounds do when your mind lets go. Let the weight of today release. Let your thoughts drift, unhurried. If a dream comes, greet it kindly. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. You've wandered far. You've walked among temples and gardens, and sacred naps and suspicious melons. You've listened to fish and followed staircases to nowhere. You've been a guest in the world of dreams, one as old as history itself. Now let your breath settle soft and slow. Let the darkness behind your eyelids widen. And if you see a lion in your sleep tonight, maybe offer it a sandal, just in case. Good night. Hey guys, tonight we sail into the stormy, rum-soaked, and unexpectedly tender waters of pirate romance. Yes, that's right tonight. It's not buried treasure or cutlasses we're talking about. It's love letters. Honest to goodness, ink-smudged heart on your sleeve pirate love letters. You're standing barefoot on the creaking deck of an 18th century brigantine. The smell of tar and salt thicken your nostrils, and what do you find wedged under a pile of navigational charts? A folded bit of parchment, sealed with candle wax, and smelling faintly of citrus and gunpowder. Now you probably won't survive this voyage if you go looking for romance during a cannon battle, but if you stay quiet, keep your head low and wait until nightfall, when the sails ripple like ghosts and the captain leans on the rail, humming a half-remembered lullaby, then you just might glimpse the softer side of piracy. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all drifting off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're sitting now on the floor of a captain's quarters, fingers trailing over the uneven edge of a letter written in spidery ink. The ship rocks gently beneath you. There's a candlestick guttering on a crate, and a soft snore coming from the bunk where the first mate has passed out fully clothed. The letter in your hand begins, "My dearest Molly," and your eyebrows go up just a little. A pirate, writing to Molly, and he's opened with "My dearest." This, you think, is going to be good. It turns out pirate letters weren't all about treasure maps and threats. A surprising number are filled with flowery metaphors, careful handwriting, and lines like, "I long for the scent of your hair more than the salt of the sea." This from a man who 2 pages later also mentions strangling a Dutch privateer with his own wig ribbon. It's an oddly human moment, these violent, chaotic men and women carving out space for affection. But they had time, didn't they? Long stretches of calm at sea, hours spent swaying in a hammock while the wind did all the work. And even pirates get homesick. Even pirates get heartache. Historians still argue whether most pirate crews encouraged letter writing or viewed it as a liability. Some captains allowed and even participated in sending letters during port stops. Others were suspicious of anything that could reveal their position or identity. But plenty of pirates just did it anyway, carefully, sometimes with false names, often with the sort of metaphors that would make a 19th century poet blush. And the ink, oh, the ink mattered. You could make it from rust and vinegar soot and brandy or the juice of boiled walnuts. Some pirates with flair and time to spare added crushed berries or used rum for extra scent, though the result tended to smear. You imagine a pirate hunched over a scrap of paper tongue between his teeth, trying to find a word that rhymes with corsair. You imagine the same man later roaring drunkenly at a parrot. People are complicated. There's also the matter of coded writing. Some love letters doubled as secret messages, names swapped for nicknames, dates given in riddles, phrases only one person could decode. You might read, "The moon kisses the east shore as I remember your touch, and know it means we're landing at midnight in Barbados," romantic and strategic, like an emo chessboard. One documented example, though the ink's mostly faded, includes a line that begins, "I carry your lock of hair in a locket next to my compass," and ends with a threat against a rival ship. Tenderness, then murder, then a kiss mark drawn in charcoal. Multitasking. Fringe researchers suggest some letters may have served magical purposes too. The idea was that writing your love's name over and over could protect you or them at sea. Others think the letters were part of sailor superstition, keep your beloved's name close, or the ocean might steal your memory. You picture a deckhand with a crumpled letter in his coat pocket, read and reread until the ink has faded to nothing but the creases remain. Maybe he never posted it, maybe she never read it, but the act of writing was the charm. There's an old phrase you hear tossed around the docks, "Write her name or the sea forgets your own." Maybe it's nonsense, maybe it's true. Either way, there's something strange and gentle about the idea that pirate identity, so often wrapped in bluster and brutality, could hinge on a few soft words penned in a moment of quiet. And when those letters survive, when they're found in shipwrecked trunks, pressed between moldy rum manifests, or tucked into the pages of a sailor's Bible, you get more than a glimpse into history. You get a whisper, a wink, a pause between cannon fire. So tonight you'll follow those whispers. You'll tuck yourself among sails and hammocks, between lovers and cannonballs, and listen. You'll walk the creaking boards of pirate ships where men and women, sunburnt, dirty, half-mad, still found time to say, "I miss you," or "Wait for me." Or here's a poem I wrote, using metaphors about seagulls. And yes, sometimes they even sealed their letters with wax, shaped like tiny hearts. You're back on deck now, the sun a lazy smear over the horizon, and the salty wind carrying whispers of a pirate whose heart beat wildly for a woman named Maria. His name was Black Sam Bellamy, often called the Prince of Pirates, and his love story is as stormy and sweeping as the seas he sailed. Bellamy wasn't your usual pirate. He was tall, charismatic, and believed by some to be a bit of a hopeless romantic, though the jury is still out among historians on how much his tender side played into his pirating career. He fell hard and fast for Maria Hallett, a young woman in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Their story unfolds like a folktale, complete with promises of reunion and secret meetings under the stars. You can almost hear the waves crashing as Bellamy, having just turned pirate captain, wrote letter after letter from the Caribbean, each dripping with longing and vivid imagery. He begged Maria to wait for him, promising to return with enough gold to build them a life far from the salty decks and cannon fire. One surviving letter fragment, smudged with sea salt and worn edges, includes a line that goes something like, "My heart sails with you, though my ship's rocks far away." You chuckle softly, because even pirates wax poetic when their minds drift from plunder to passion. Yet Bellamy's story is laced with uncertainty. Historians still argue whether his letters to Maria were genuine love notes or partly clever distractions designed to keep rivals and crews loyal. Some say Maria waited faithfully. Others believe she married another, while Bellamy met his end in a tragic shipwreck off Cape Cod, a victim of a hurricane that swallowed his ship whole. The idea of pirates writing tender letters to loved ones feels a bit like finding a leather-bound romance novel in a tool chest full of rusty knives. But Bellamy's letters remind you that behind the reputation of cutthroat marauders, there were real people with real hearts, sometimes breaking, sometimes hopeful, always human. And here's a quirky detail: Bellamy wasn't just writing for Maria's eyes. He also crafted letters meant to be read aloud around the ship, boosting morale or soothing homesick crew members. So his words had to strike a delicate balance, intimate enough for his beloved, broad enough for the roughest pirate ears. Imagine a pirate standing under a flickering lantern, reciting a love letter in a gravelly voice, trying not to laugh when the first mate interrupts with a joke about sea monsters. You wonder if Bellamy ever got embarrassed reading his own poetry out loud. There's a strange comfort in knowing that even a man who spent his life chasing treasure and running from the law found the time to dream about a life beyond the horizon with someone waiting for him back home. Of course, love letters weren't always just words. Sometimes they carried gifts, locks of hair, pressed flowers, or even tiny bottles of scented oil. Bellamy supposedly sent Maria a piece of coral he found on a reef, polished and tied with a thread from his shirt. It's a small, precious token that speaks louder than any pirate threat ever could. And yet, for all the sweetness, the letters also carried the dangers of pirate life. Each one was a risk, a trail back to your location, a clue to enemies, a reminder of vulnerabilities. That's why pirates often used code words or disguised their feelings in metaphors, turning a simple "I love you" into a riddle only the recipient could decode. Historians still debate how many of these letters survived because pirates destroyed them to protect their secrets, or because they simply got lost in storms and shipwrecks. But the fragments we have scattered like driftwood across history offer a glimpse of a pirate's softer side, a man as full of yearning and doubt as anyone else. So you sit quietly with Bellamy's words, feeling the swell of the ocean beneath your feet and the ache of waiting in your chest. The ship creaks, the wind whispers, and for a moment the life of a pirate seems less about plunder and more about the hope of coming home. The night deepens, and you find yourself tucked below decks in a cramped, dimly lit space where the ship's journals and letters are carefully stashed. The smell here is a mix of damp wood salt and something faintly sour, perhaps last week's hardtack, left too close to a barrel of rum. This is where pirates wrote during those rare stretches of calm, when the waves lulled the ship into a gentle sway and the world outside felt miles away. Pirate journals are often overlooked in history, but they offer a surprising window into the daily lives and private thoughts of these sea rovers. Most people imagine pirates as constant cannon fire and shouting, but between the chaos, there were long stretches of boredom, broken only by the scratching of quills on parchment. You pull out a faded journal, its pages brittle, but still holding stories of the mundane weather conditions, sightings of other ships, and occasional bursts of poetry or love notes. Some entries read like letters, addressed to my dearest Anne, or the fair maid who waits on shore. Here's a mainstream fact to hold on to: pirates, contrary to popular belief, were often surprisingly organized. Many maintained ship logs and personal journals, sometimes with neat handwriting. These records weren't just for navigation, they were emotional outlets. Writing kept the loneliness at bay. And speaking of Anne, this brings us to a delightful fringe tidbit. Anne Bonny, the fiery pirate woman who sailed with Calico Jack, was known for her sharp tongue and sharper blade, but she was also a prolific letter writer. Legend has it she penned secret notes to a lover while imprisoned, mixing coded language and tender confessions. These letters were sometimes smuggled out by sympathetic jailers or friends, though many were lost to time. Some speculate Anne's writings reveal a softer, more vulnerable side, rarely seen in pirate lore, but historians still argue whether her letters were truly romantic or clever manipulations to gain sympathy. You imagine the candle flickering as Anne, locked in a damp cell, traces her quill slowly across the page, perhaps sneaking in a joke or a reference only her lover would understand. The harsh reality outside fades for a moment, replaced by the thrill of connection and hope. Writing below deck wasn't easy. The cramped quarters, constant motion, and threat of discovery made the act almost rebellious. You almost hear the scrape of a knife as a lookout passes nearby, the faint murmur of voices, and the occasional creak of the mast. Pirates also used journals to document more than just love. Some included recipes for curing scurvy, others detailed strange superstitions, and a few even captured stories of sea monsters seen on foggy nights. Imagine a pirate reading his journal aloud to the crew, mixing tales of giant squid with confessions of longing for home. This mix of practical notes and personal reflections makes pirate journals unique artifacts, part diary, part survival guide, part love letter. There's also an ongoing debate among historians about the authenticity of some surviving pirate journals. Were they written by pirates themselves, or are they romanticized accounts penned by later authors eager to glamorize piracy? This question lingers like the smell of old parchment, difficult to ignore, but hard to fully answer. You tuck the journal away carefully, imagining the hand that wrote it, the mind that paused to scribble a poem or pen a desperate plea. Wait for me, I will return with the dawn. The ship creaks softly above, and you feel the weight of centuries pressing down, a gentle reminder that pirates, with all their rough edges, were human after all. The salty breeze carries you back out on deck, where the night sky is a tapestry of stars shimmering like scattered treasure. You settle against the rough wood railing, the cool air brushing your skin as your thoughts drift to the pirates' unique way of preserving their love letters, often in bottles cast into the sea like messages in a watery bottle-shaped hope. Imagine a pirate captain somewhere in the 18th century Caribbean carefully rolling up a letter, sealing it with wax from a melted candle, and slipping it into a glass bottle before heaves it overboard. This wasn't just a romantic gesture, it was a practical gamble. The ocean was unpredictable, but these bottles could sometimes find their way to distant shores, reaching loved ones or fellow pirates far away. Here's a solid historical fact. The practice of sending messages in bottles dates back centuries, but pirates and sailors made it a quirky tradition, blending superstition with hope. These bottles could also serve as distress signals or secret missives depending on who was reading or finding them. A curious little tidbit is that some pirate letters, sealed in bottles, contained not only words, but small keepsakes, a pressed flower, a carved bone trinket, or even a strand of hair. These personal touches added a layer of intimacy, softening the harsh reality of pirate life. Historians still debate whether messages in bottles were effective communication methods or mostly symbolic acts of longing. After all, the odds of a bottle making it to the right person were slim, but the act itself carried meaning, a ritual to connect two worlds separated by vast, unforgiving seas. You picture a pirate wife on a distant island, stormy-eyed and wind-whipped, discovering one of these bottles washed ashore. She uncorks it carefully, unfolds the salty parchment, and reads the familiar handwriting words that speak of love, of survival, and the endless wait. And then there's the quirky notion that some pirates believed the sea itself was a living entity capable of delivering their messages and protecting their secrets. Bottles were like whispers cast into the ocean's ear, and maybe, just maybe, the sea would answer. The choice of words in these letters is fascinating too. Pirates often disguised their feelings in metaphors and nautical jargon, making love sound like a voyage affection, like treasure, and separation, like navigating dangerous reefs. This poetic language wasn't just flair, it was a shield, a way to protect both sender and recipient from prying eyes or hostile ships. Think about it. Writing a letter that could be read by anyone, but still holds secret meanings for just one person, requires cleverness and patience, traits not often associated with pirates, but clearly present in their more tender moments. You let the image settle, a glass bottle, bobbing on a restless sea, carrying a fragile human connection across the vast unknown, a silent promise that even in the chaos of piracy love found a way to speak. The ship rocks gently as you lean back, your eyes tracing the outline of the moon's silver glow. Your mind drifts to the language pirates used in their letters, an intriguing blend of slang code and heartfelt expression that could confuse even the most seasoned cryptographer. These weren't just simple notes. They were carefully crafted puzzles meant to protect secrets, especially when it came to matters of the heart. It's a well-known fact that pirates developed their own jargon terms, like Hall Wind Scuttle and Jolly Roger peppered their speech, but this coded language extended into their written correspondence as well. When writing love letters, pirates often employed metaphors related to the sea and treasure, creating an intimate vocabulary that only the intended recipient could decipher. For instance, a pirate might write about finding safe harbor instead of confessing a wish to return home, or describe a hidden chest as a metaphor for his beloved's heart. These phrases weren't just poetic flair. They were security measures. Pirates had to be wary of intercepted messages revealing their whereabouts or plans. A quirky detail: some pirates used invisible ink made from lemon juice or vinegar to hide their most sensitive notes. The message would only appear when heated gently, maybe by the light of a candle or a warm hearth. Imagine the suspense of waiting for your lover to uncover your secret words by carefully warming the paper. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was among pirates, since most surviving letters don't show clear signs of invisible ink or elaborate codes. Some argue that the romanticized idea of secret codes comes more from later pirate fiction than actual historical documents. But whether myth or reality, the notion of pirate love letters doubling as cryptic puzzles adds a layer of charm to these otherwise rugged lives. You can picture a pirate captain grinning slyly as he hides a message in plain sight, confident that only his beloved would understand the clues tucked between lines. This coded communication wasn't limited to love notes. Pirates often used it to relay information about upcoming raids or hidden loot. Letters could serve double duty, blending affection with strategy, a clever dance between vulnerability and survival. It's funny to think of pirates as secret agents of romance, sending cryptic messages by candlelight, while the rest of the crew plotted their next attack. You might imagine a gruff pirate scribbling a heartfelt note, then smearing lemon juice on the page, all while humming a shanty. The practice shows how pirates, despite their rough reputation, were deeply creative and careful with their personal connections. Writing was both a lifeline and a shield, a way to keep love alive amidst the unpredictability of the high seas. So next time you imagine a pirate's life, remember these coded letters, whispers wrapped in mystery, and salt bridging the gap between two hearts amid the roar of cannon fire and crashing waves. The sun dips low, painting the horizon in hues of orange and pink, and you feel the warmth fade into a cool evening chill. As the crew prepares for another night watch, your thoughts wander to the pirates' unique approach to sealing their letters, sometimes with a drop of blood. Not in some grim ritual, but as a symbol of sincerity and commitment. This practice might sound shocking today, but in the 18th century, sealing letters with blood wasn't unheard of among pirates. It was a way to guarantee authenticity. A wax seal could be faked, but a fresh bloodstain that was a promise inked in flesh. A pirate's letter sealed in blood said, "I stake my life on these words." Here's a well-documented fact. Blood seals appear in some surviving letters from pirates and privateers, indicating the gravity of the message inside. It was especially common in love letters or pledges of loyalty within a crew. On the quirkier side, some pirates believed that the blood seal carried magical properties, binding the recipient emotionally or even spiritually. There were whispered tales that breaking a blood-sealed letter was bad luck or worse, a curse. This blurring of practical and mystical beliefs was typical in pirate superstitions. Historians still debate whether blood seals were a widespread practice or limited to a few notorious figures. Some think it was more theatrical than common, a form of emotional showmanship designed to impress or intimidate. You imagine a pirate captain dipping his finger in a small cut, perhaps, from the day's scrimmage and pressing it gently onto a letter. The rich red stain contrasts with the pale parchment, a bold, living signature that speaks louder than words. Blood seals weren't just romantic, they were political. Pirates operated outside the law, so trust was everything. A blood seal could confirm an alliance, a truce, or a promise to split the treasure fairly. It was a pact that carried real weight in a world where betrayal could mean a quick death, or worse, a slow, miserable imprisonment. It's fascinating to think how pirates mixed brutal reality with tender rituals. A letter sealed in blood might include a simple, "I miss you," or a strategic note about an upcoming raid, blending vulnerability with survival instincts. You might chuckle, imagining a pirate crew debating the merits of blood seals at the next port tavern, some calling it dramatic nonsense, others swearing by its power. It was part superstition, part emotional code, a perfect example of pirate life's contradictory nature. As the night deepens and the ship creaks softly, you feel the pulse of this fragile humanity beneath the rough exterior. Pirates, with all their fierceness, knew the language of the heart, sometimes written in ink, sometimes in blood. You settle in as the stars blink overhead like scattered diamonds, the ship gently swaying beneath you. Your mind drifts to the surprising role of women in pirate correspondence. Contrary to the usual rough and tumble pirate image, women were sometimes the cherished recipients of those love letters, and intriguingly some even authored letters themselves, challenging assumptions about gender roles at sea. It's a mainstream fact that female pirates like Anne Bonny and Mary Red not only sailed, but also engaged in the same rituals of letter writing as their male counterparts. Their correspondence offers rare insights into how women navigated the precarious pirate world, both as comrades in arms and as lovers. A lesser-known tidbit is that some women on pirate ships acted as messengers carrying letters between ships or to shore. They sometimes wrote letters, disguised in the voices of men to protect identities or to ensure messages were taken seriously. Imagine a woman writing a passionate note under the guise of a gruff pirate, carefully balancing honesty with disguise. Historians still debate the extent of female involvement in pirate letter writing. Were they merely muses and recipients, or active participants shaping pirate communication? The evidence is patchy, but the presence of female voices adds an unexpected softness to the gritty tales. You picture a quiet moment below deck where a woman pens a letter to a lover back home, her hand steady despite the rocking ship. Her words carry hope, longing, and perhaps a touch of defiance against the world that sees her as an anomaly. Pirate women's letters sometimes reveal a different kind of love, fierce loyalty to their crew, or a desire to be remembered not just as lovers, but as equals. These letters can be humorous too, filled with playful teasing or sly jokes about the absurdities of pirate life. It's fascinating how pirates, often cast as brutal outlaws, shared these tender, witty moments. Their letters show humor and humanity like a well-placed joke about a crew member's terrible singing or a sardonic comment on the endless smell of salted fish. In some cases, women's letters served practical purposes too. They could negotiate ransoms, arrange safe passage, or warn allies of incoming threats. This blend of personal and political shows the multifaceted role of writing in pirate society. You almost hear the scratch of a quill, the rustle of parchment, and the muffled laughter of women exchanging secret notes under watchful eyes, a reminder that love wit and survival were all entwined on these restless seas. The night air cools further as you lean back, hearing the gentle slap of waves against the hull. Your thoughts turn to the fascinating ways pirates preserved their letters, especially when journeys lasted months or even years. Instead of the brittle faded notes you might expect, many letters were kept carefully in waterproof containers or hidden in secret compartments aboard the ship, ensuring their words survived the harsh maritime environment. Here's a solid historical fact. Pirates often carried small leather pouches or metal boxes designed specifically to protect important documents from saltwater damage. These containers were prized possessions, sometimes passed down from captain to captain as symbols of trust. An odd and less well-known detail is that some pirates used waxed cloth or oiled parchment to make their letters more durable. This technique, similar to early waterproofing, helped preserve letters against the constant threat of dampness and storms. You can almost picture a pirate carefully wrapping a letter like a precious artifact before tucking it into a waterproof chest. Historians still argue about how standardized these preservation methods were. Some suggest that less experienced crews neglected document care, leading to the loss of many letters, while others believe the practice was more common than surviving records indicate. You imagine the tension aboard ship when a treasured letter might get lost, or damaged feelings mixed with frustration, heartbreak, and a dash of superstition. Pirates were notoriously superstitious, and losing a love letter might have felt like bad luck, or worse, a sign of betrayal. Beyond love letters, this care extended to maps, codes, and contracts documents that could mean life or death. Preserving written words was as crucial as safeguarding weapons or supplies, reflecting the importance pirates placed on communication amid chaos. It's amusing to think that these hardened seafarers, known for their roughness, could be so meticulous and delicate about their letters. Maybe it was the same impulse that led them to write poetic metaphors about storms and treasure, an attempt to bring order and beauty into an unpredictable world. You can almost feel the texture of the waxed parchment and hear the faint rustle as a pirate opens a waterproof pouch, unfolding a letter stained with salt and time. It's a small miracle that any of these fragile tokens have survived whispering stories of love and longing across centuries. And just maybe, Those carefully preserved letters kept the heart of pirate life beating steady even when the seas were wild and uncertain. The cool night deepens as you settle more comfortably, the distant creak of rigging and the soft murmur of the crew fading into the background. You find yourself pondering the surprising impact of pirate letters on the broader world, how these seemingly private notes sometimes stirred political intrigue, sparked naval pursuits, or even shifted alliances in the volatile world of 18th century piracy. One well-established fact is that letters intercepted by rival navies or colonial governments occasionally exposed pirate movements or revealed secret alliances. Captured letters could lead to dramatic arrests or naval battles, making correspondence a dangerous game. Pirates had to balance the need to communicate with the risk of exposure. A quirky detail some pirates deliberately wrote, misleading letters planting false information to confuse enemies or lure them into traps. Think of it as early espionage, but with a salty pirate twist, sending fake love letters or coded messages that meant one thing to the enemy and something entirely different to the intended recipient. Historians still debate the extent to which pirate letters influenced larger political strategies versus being mere personal mementos. Some argue that pirates were master manipulators, using letters as part of sophisticated networks, while others see these communications as more impulsive and emotional. Imagine a tense moment when a pirate captain learns that a letter meant for his lover has fallen into the hands of a naval commander. The stakes suddenly rise. The letter could betray safe havens alliances or even the identity of hidden pirate crews. Letters sometimes contained veiled threats or diplomatic overtures showing how pirates navigated complex social and political webs. These written words were tools of power as much as expressions of affection, shaping the delicate dance between outlaw and an empire. It's amusing to picture a pirate's reaction on hearing that a love letter caused a naval blockade or a fleet to set sail. Perhaps they laughed it off with a hearty R and penned an even more cryptic note, next time doubling down on secrecy. Despite the danger, pirates rarely gave up on writing, driven by the human need to connect and influence. Their letters reveal a world where love, war, and politics collided on paper as much a battlefield as the open sea. And so the humble pirate letter becomes a tiny yet potent force in the grand story of empire and rebellion, proof that even the most unruly hearts understood the power of the written word. The chill of the night wraps around you like a soft blanket as you lean back, feeling the gentle sway of the ship beneath. You begin to reflect on the language pirates used in their letters, an intriguing blend of formal and colloquial that reveals much about their personalities and social backgrounds. One solid historical fact is that many pirates were former sailors, soldiers, or even gentlemen who had turned to piracy, bringing with them a variety of literacy levels and speech patterns. Their letters often mix sailor jargon with surprisingly poetic turns of phrase painting vivid pictures of life at sea. A quirky tidbit is that some pirate letters include playful wordplay or coded slang meant only for the recipient to understand. For example, sending you a chest full of gold might secretly mean I'm thinking of you, or the storm brews ahead could hint at an upcoming danger or emotional turmoil. Historians still debate how standardized pirate letter writing was. Did they follow any conventions, or was each letter a unique reflection of the writer's mood and background? Some scholars argue pirates had their own evolving lingo, while others see their writing as more ad hoc. You imagine sitting beside a pirate as he scratches his quill across parchment, hesitating between formal phrases learned in school and the salty slang of the tavern. Maybe he chuckles softly, tossing in a cheeky pun or a heartfelt compliment, trying to strike the right tone. The contrast between rough life and refined language is one of the most charming contradictions of pirate letters. Beneath the scars and swagger lies a surprisingly nuanced emotional world where humor and tenderness peek through. Sometimes the letters served as playful banter, mocking the hardships of piracy or teasing the recipient about their patience. Other times, they grew somber, expressing loneliness, fears of betrayal, or hopes for a better future. You might even find letters that read like short stories, recounting adventures with exaggerated flair meant to entertain loved ones far away. These narratives helped keep relationships alive, bridging the vast distances and dangers of pirate life. This mixture of styles turns each letter into a time capsule, capturing the complex identities of pirates who were at once ruthless outlaws and devoted lovers, skilled storytellers, and loyal friends. As you imagine those ink-stained hands crafting such letters, you feel the pulse of a world where language was both weapon and balm, a lifeline amid the endless sea.